tracksuit that some people theorized was yet more evidence that he was nodding to his fellow Groypers online.
That's right. And I had written at the time, trying to explain to people that, yes, some of these memes that he may have dressed up as for Halloween have far-right connotations, particularly for older people. But if you are 22 years old, teenager in the first Trump administration, those were just cultural references. It seems just as likely to me that Robinson was someone who just enjoyed internet culture, was fascinated by memes. The impulse, particularly for the mainstream media, to paint all memes as either being on the right or the left is not really accurate to reality. You can open up TikTok right now, pick any random viral video, and you'll find young people talking like incels because they think it's funny, talking like Donald Trump because they think it's funny. There are layers of irony to a lot of this stuff that don't conform to the simple political spectrum of internet culture that particularly the mainstream media, and I suppose law enforcement as well, just decided was the case for everyone, 5-10 years ago.
Let's just tick through some of those memes on the bullet casings, because it really wasn't clear as information was trickling out how much meaning was supposed to be derived from these memes, right?
Exactly. The bullet that reportedly struck Charlie Kirk and killed him had written on it, "Notice his bulge, ooh, what's this?" Some variation of that. It's a reference to a bit of cringe humor that started as furry roleplay. Furries are a subculture, people who dress up in animal costumes. It doesn't mean that Robinson is a furry. It's been shared forever, and it's just this piece of viral ephemera. The other 3 bullets recovered by law enforcement, one of them read, "Hey fascists, catch," with the arrow combination for triggering a bomb in the video game Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2, you play as effectively like a fascist army in space, and there's all kinds of discourse in that community about, how much you should lean into the fascist aesthetic of the video game versus how much of it is satire.
But it's also just like one of the most popular games right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely popular. The next bullet had on it written, "Oh, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao, Ciao," reference to an Italian anti-fascist folk song, but it's also a popular piece of pop culture right now. It was in Money Heist, it was in the video game Far Cry 6. And then the last one, which I think points to the whole thing being a troll, which has been backed up most recently by Discord chat logs released by law enforcement from Robinson. The last bullet read, "If you're reading this, you're gay, LMAO." And in the Discord chat logs belonging to Robinson, he basically admits, it would be funny if Fox News read these bullets on air.
He said he would have a stroke if he saw it.
Exactly. There has been a growing trend of spree shooters and extremists writing messages on bullets before, they carry out violent attacks. There's also been an increase in the use of memes to telegraph and window dress political violence, going all the way back to Christchurch in 2019.
That's when the killer said subscribe to PewDiePie.
Exactly.
Which was just a kind of a big FU to everyone, I guess.
Yeah, it's a troll, which I think points to the larger thing here, which is that mass violence, school shootings, particularly in America, have been going on for so long that someone like Tyler Robinson, who's 22 years old, has only ever known a world not only with them as a feature, but also the media reaction, the law enforcement reaction. They know what's going to happen after they do something like this. They know that there will be a race to uncover their social media. There will be a race to figure out why they did it. They know that there are opportunities there to mess with people, to troll people. It's like they know how this works.
It's hard to hear that, because then you can't help but thinking to yourself as a journalist, well, I'm just being manipulated by a killer.
You are. I mean, without question. And in fact, the way that Charlie Kirk's murder was orchestrated, in front of a crowd of people who were already filming him with their phones, who immediately uploaded that footage to the internet. It's not just journalists that are being manipulated, it's social platforms are now being manipulated, and just average users. We are all part of this event. It's extremely meta.
Now that we know more about Robinson, we don't know a ton, we know more. How would you describe this person's politics?
Going off of what his friends told the reporter Ken Klippenstein, going off of the Discord chat logs that were released by law enforcement, off of the Facebook pictures that people found on his mom's Facebook page, I feel fairly confident saying that this was a person who was not exactly a deep political thinker. It was someone who seems to be learning about politics as we speak, like currently. Someone from a fairly right-wing household, someone who's beginning to question that. He reminds me a lot of Luigi Mangione, the idea being that he was, going to have some sort of great revolutionary writing that would be unearthed, and then when people dug into it, they realized that his politics were completely incoherent, other than just a general anger at the health insurance industry. I feel fairly safe in saying that this is similar. This is someone who saw an opportunity that aligned with, some of the things that they were thinking about and took that opportunity.
We have seen, particularly this administration and the right-wing online media, focus on the fact that Robinson had a trans roommate.
I'm not saying that he didn't have a motivation. It's more just that I don't get the sense that it was very well thought out. I don't get the sense that he is a grand revolutionary figure so much as someone who appears to have a close relationship with a trans person and was upset at Charlie Kirk for spreading anti-trans rhetoric. Robinson's trans roommate is the only reason we know anything about Robinson's personal life. They've been extremely forthcoming with law enforcement.
I do want to ask you about something you said on your podcast last weekend. You referred to today's social internet as a radicalization engine. Explain what you meant.
The way the internet is structured and what people view on the internet, and how, in particular, automated algorithms like the ones that power TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube influence people. We know that there's a connection to their behavior and how they see the world. We also know that around 2014, the right wing became very interested in building a vast digital media network to counter what they saw as liberal bias in the mainstream media. So this is the beginning of the Breitbart News Facebook explosion. You start to see the rise of organizations like Turning Point USA embracing podcasts and YouTube. And now, without question, the conservative media is larger than the non-conservative media. And they have also successfully hijacked popular culture. So someone like Robinson, when they're 17 years old, is dressing up as Pepe the Frog, and they're not really thinking about it because that's just another part of pop culture. You have random TikTok users that are using terms like Sigma male and looks maxing, not realizing that they were made popular by incels in manifestos that they wrote before they carried out spree shootings. If you are a young person right now, this is the water that you swim in. And if you're the parent of a young person right now, there is almost nothing you can do to minimize their exposure to these ideas. Now, they might just see them and pass them by and move on with their lives, but there is a very extreme contingent of people who start to pull on those threads, and it takes them further down rabbit holes that are then enforced by these unthinking algorithms that recommend more and more extreme content to them as a way to keep them on these platforms.
I guess what I'm struggling with is, how do we talk about this problem that you're identifying without fueling the panic about the internet that so often, at least in our country, seems to lead to more censorship? I mean, on Wednesday, for instance, Representative James Comer announced that the CEOs of Discord, Twitch, Steam, and Reddit would all be called to testify before Congress in light of Kirk's killing, to answer questions about radicalization.
Those apps in particular are all part of what I would call the gaming world. And there's a real desire, knowing what we now know about Robinson, to explain his radicalization. And so the right is very, very focused on saying, okay, well, maybe it was the trans partner, or maybe it was the fact that he was a gamer, or the fact that he was using Discord. There's also a massive community of leftist streamers on Twitch that I'm sure the Trump administration would love to throttle or suppress, particularly people like Hassan Piker.
This is the socialist Twitch streamer who Elon Musk, among others, have been calling for Twitch to deplatform, in light of many things he said over the years.
Yes, there's that part of it. But to answer your question on, how do we talk about this stuff without inspiring more censorship, a larger mass panic about the internet, what I would point to is that we already did it. In fact, if you look at 2013, 2014, ISIS was effectively removed from the internet. And other, let's say, mimetic social diseases, eating disorders, were really, really clamped down on by major platforms. child sexual abuse material, non-consensual sexual abuse material, all of these issues that we've known spread in unmoderated platforms, we did for a brief moment clamp down on. And then we stopped. When I talk about moderation, I don't mean that it's the same as censorship. There are things that are innate to the way people use the internet that we know get worse when you don't moderate the internet. But at certain points throughout the internet's history, it has been a fairly moderated and safer place to be. 20 years ago, you weren't even able to put your credit card information into a website. Now you can. Like, we can do these things, but you have to approach them in a very specific way. And that way does not involve the government.
So, I mean, it almost feels tone deaf to engage in techno-utopianism discussions on the radio, given where our politics are at currently. But what's the solution?
One thing that has just never been done throughout the last 15 years is anti-monopoly, antitrust legislation for tech companies. And there is a line of thinking that I tend to subscribe to, which is that this is all a matter of scale. That there actually doesn't need to be a social platform or a website that has all of humanity on it simultaneously. You can't properly moderate a site that has more members than the Catholic Church. Like, it's just, you can't do it. Which is just to say, there's maybe an argument that social platforms should have some kind of limit to their size, whether that is the limit to the size of the company or the limit to the size of the users. But that is something that has never been attempted.
Break them up.
Just break them up, because all of the problems of the current internet existed before social media. There were neo-Nazi websites dating back all the way to the 90s. There were conspiracy theorists like InfoWars that had their blogs and their websites and their online TV shows. But because of scale, no one really cared.
Ryan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.